The sky above the palace shimmered in shades of violet and silver as the twin suns began to set. The human explorer, David, landed his small shuttle in the outer courtyard of the alien kingdom, his heart racing with both excitement and caution. He had traveled light years to reach this planet, not for conquest or curiosity alone, but for a mission that carried the hope of peace. The alien factions had been at war for decades, and he was the unlikely envoy sent to negotiate. David moved silently through the palace corridors, the polished floors reflecting the dim, bioluminescent lights embedded in the walls. Every corner seemed alive with alien artistry, intricate patterns etched in metal and stone. Glowing faintly with soft pulses, he had been separated from his team moments earlier during a sudden ambush by rebels who were clearly trying to prevent any diplomatic effort. The palace, though grand and awe-inspiring, now felt dangerous and unpredictable. As he turned a corner, he heard the faint rustle of movement behind a partially closed door. He hesitated, instincts telling him to retreat, but curiosity and a sense of duty pushed him forward. With a gentle push, he entered the room, and time seemed to freeze. Inside, the alien princess was caught completely off guard. She had been preparing in private, unaware that anyone would intrude. Her large, luminous eyes widened in shock as she noticed the human standing frozen at the threshold. For a moment, neither spoke, and the only sound was the faint hum of the palace's energy fields. David immediately looked away, his training and respect for other cultures kicking in. He raised his hands slightly, showing no threat. His voice, calm and deliberate, broke the silence. "I mean no harm. I am not here to fight. I only wish to speak." The princess studied him, still tense but slowly regaining composure. There was something unusual about this human. He did not carry the arrogance or fear she had expected from alien visitors. Instead, he radiated calmness and courage, qualities she found rare in outsiders. She let her gaze linger on him briefly, evaluating, before finally speaking in her soft, melodic language, which David understood through his universal translator. "Why are you here alone?" she asked, curiosity mixed with caution. David stepped forward, careful to maintain respectful distance. "I was separated from my team during an attack. I am here to negotiate peace, not to harm anyone. Your people are strong, but conflict benefits no one." Her shock slowly gave way to intrigue. She had expected arrogance, fear, or deceit from intruders, but this human showed none of these traits. Instead, he spoke with confidence and honesty. The tension in her posture eased just slightly, though she remained alert. "You are brave to enter uninvited," she said, her voice steady but layered with surprise. "Most of your kind would not dare to cross these halls alone." David gave a small, respectful nod. "Bravery without reason is foolish. I only wish to help." The princess hesitated, then gestured for him to sit on a cushioned platform across the room. He complied, careful not to breach her personal space. The room was unlike anything David had seen. Walls of translucent crystal displayed faintly shifting colors, and soft light illuminated alien plants that pulsed with life. Despite the elegance, the room radiated vulnerability, a glimpse into the private life of someone who carried the weight of an entire kingdom. As they spoke, David noticed the subtle signs of her strain. The princess's eyes, usually fierce and commanding, carried a flicker of exhaustion. Her shoulders, though straight and proud, seemed weighed down by responsibilities unseen. He realized that the shock she had shown earlier was not just from his sudden entry, but from the constant pressure of ruling a realm torn by conflict. "You are different from the humans I have studied," she said thoughtfully. "Most would not enter a room alone. Most would not show respect without demand. Why are you not afraid?" David considered her question carefully. "Fear is natural, but it should not guide actions. I focus on what I can do to help, rather than what might happen to me. That is the way to survive, and to make a difference." The princess listened, her initial shock now replaced with curiosity. She leaned back slightly, studying him as if trying to discern his true nature. There was something compelling about him, something that set him apart from the beings she had known. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but in a way that fascinated her rather than frightened her. Suddenly, a distant alarm echoed through the palace, pulling them both back to reality. The enemy faction had begun another assault, and the palace's security systems were responding. The princess's eyes sharpened, and she stood, her commanding presence immediately returning. "You should not be here during an attack," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. "It is dangerous." David rose as well, hands raised again to show no threat. "I can help. I may not be like your soldiers, but I can assist in strategy or evacuation. I have experience with crisis situations." For a moment, she hesitated, then saw the determination in his eyes. Against her better judgment, she decided to let him stay. There was a spark of hope in the human's presence. Perhaps someone from another world could see solutions she had overlooked. Together, they moved through the palace corridors, avoiding patrols and alarm systems. The princess observed him closely, noting how he navigated unfamiliar territory with ease and awareness. His calmness in the face of danger was remarkable, and it reminded her that humans, though physically weaker than many alien species, possessed a resilience and intelligence that could be invaluable. As they reached a safer chamber, the princess finally spoke with a hint of vulnerability. "I did not expect anyone to understand what it is like to bear the responsibility of a kingdom alone." David nodded sympathetically. "I cannot imagine carrying such a burden, but I do know the value of courage, empathy, and thinking clearly in difficult moments. You are not alone now. Let me help." The princess considered his words. She was still wary, but a small seed of trust had been planted. This human, who had intruded at the most vulnerable moment of her life, had shown restraint, respect, and courage. Those qualities were rare in any being, and she could not ignore them. They sat together briefly, listening to the distant sounds of conflict. The palace, though majestic, was under threat, and yet in that moment, an unspoken understanding formed between them. He would not overstep, and she would not dismiss him. Both recognized that their survival and the future of the kingdom might depend on their cooperation. As the first part of the evening passed, the princess spoke again, her tone softer now. "Perhaps humans are not as fragile as I was told. Perhaps there is more to your kind than I understood." David smiled faintly. "Humans are capable of great mistakes, but also great courage. You will see this soon enough." The alarm eventually quieted, but the tension remained. Outside, the palace grounds were a blur of movement and activity. Inside, two unlikely allies had begun to form a connection based not on attraction, but on respect, understanding, and a shared goal. That night, as the twin suns disappeared completely behind the horizon, the princess found herself glancing toward the human, noting how he remained composed despite the chaos around them. She could not yet trust him completely, but she could not ignore his presence either. There was a quiet power in his humanity, a strength that spoke not of weapons or might, but of courage, wisdom, and heart. And for David, the encounter had changed his perception as well. He had expected danger, hostility, and suspicion, yet found himself facing a being of complexity, intelligence, and vulnerability. He understood now that this mission was not only about diplomacy, it was about showing that humans could be more than just outsiders. They could be allies, even heroes, in worlds far beyond their own. As the night deepened, both of them sat silently, listening to the hum of the palace. Outside, distant echoes of the enemy faded, leaving the promise of a new day. And within the walls of that room, an unusual, unspoken understanding had begun. A bond forged not through words alone, but through the quiet acknowledgement of courage, respect, and the possibilities of what humans could achieve among the stars. The night in the palace was quiet, but the tension in the air had not fully lifted. Outside, faint patrols moved silently along the corridors, their presence a reminder that danger could return at any moment. Inside the chamber, David and the princess sat across from each other, their conversation tentative at first, yet slowly opening doors to understanding. The princess, whose name was Lyria, observed him closely. His posture was calm, but she could see the alertness in his eyes. He was different from the humans she had read about in the archives, those who were sent as observers or diplomats, but often lacked the courage to act when needed. David had not only entered her private chamber uninvited, but had also maintained respect and restraint, a balance that surprised her deeply. "You are not like the humans I have studied," Lyria said, her voice soft but steady. "They are cautious, fearful, and sometimes foolish. You are something else." David smiled faintly. "I suppose I cannot speak for all humans. But I do know that fear should not guide decisions. Courage and reason matter more. That is how wars are ended, and lives are saved." Lyria considered his words. There was wisdom in his simplicity, a clarity that her people often lacked. In her world, rulers were expected to act decisively, sometimes without questioning, and yet here was a human who had entered her life unexpectedly and shown more understanding than many advisors she had trusted for years. "Do you understand the weight of ruling a kingdom?" she asked quietly. "Every choice I make affects millions of lives. Sometimes, it feels as though the burden will crush me." David leaned slightly forward, careful not to overstep. "I may not know your people or your world fully, but I do know responsibility. I have seen what happens when leaders fail to see the human cost of their choices. You are not weak for feeling the weight. You are strong for bearing it and still acting." Lyria's eyes softened, a flicker of relief passing across her face. For centuries, her people had taught her to hide vulnerability, to always appear unshakable, yet here was someone from another world, recognizing not just her power, but her humanity. She had not expected understanding, and it unsettled her in a way she could not explain. "Your words are different," she admitted. "They do not carry the usual flattery or fear. They are honest, and that is strange coming from someone outside my world." David shrugged lightly, though his expression remained serious. "I speak as I think. Pretending otherwise would not help either of us. Honesty builds trust, and trust is something we need if your kingdom is to survive the threats it faces." There was a pause as they both reflected on their conversation. The palace seemed quieter now, as if it had taken a deep breath after the chaos of the earlier attack. Yet the memory of the alarms and the flashing lights lingered, a reminder that danger could strike again at any moment. Lyria stood, moving to the edge of the room where a large window overlooked the sprawling city below. Lights shimmered like stars, and the faint glow of energy conduits traced intricate patterns across the streets. "I was trained to command armies, to make hard choices, to fight," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "But I was never taught how to deal with uncertainty. The enemy is clever. They do not strike openly. They wait, they watch, and they exploit weaknesses." David joined her, keeping a respectful distance. "That is why understanding patterns and thinking ahead is important. You are not alone in this. I can help you plan, anticipate their moves. Two perspectives are stronger than one." She looked at him, considering his offer. Humans were physically weaker than most of her people, yet there was an intelligence and clarity in him that she had not seen from many of her advisors. Perhaps, she thought, the key to survival was not strength alone, but the combination of courage, insight, and unconventional thinking. "I will allow it," she said finally. "You may assist me, but only if you respect my decisions and my people. I will not tolerate interference that undermines my authority." David inclined his head respectfully. "Agreed. I am here to support, not to command. Your people, your world, your rules." With the agreement made, they began to strategize. David observed the palace defenses, noting weaknesses in the security grid and potential blind spots that enemies might exploit. Lyria shared knowledge of her people's patrol rotations, energy shields, and the communication network that linked every wing of the palace. Together, they combined human ingenuity and alien technology to develop plans that were both effective and subtle. Hours passed as they worked, David noticed that Lyria, though always commanding, seemed less rigid in his presence. She asked questions, explored ideas, and even laughed quietly at his occasional misinterpretation of alien customs. It was a rare moment of humanity in her life of constant responsibility. "You think too much like a human," she said once, a smile playing on her lips. "Most of my advisors would not consider this approach. They are bound by tradition, not practicality." "And you think like a princess," David replied, smiling in return. "But even a princess can learn new ways, especially when the stakes are high." The conversation shifted naturally from strategy to culture. Lyria explained her world, its history, and the centuries-long conflict that had hardened her people. David shared stories of Earth and humanity, of struggles for survival, cooperation, and the endless drive to explore. She listened with fascination, realizing that humans, though fragile in appearance, possessed a resilience and determination that could rival even the strongest alien species. "Your people have survived much," she said quietly. "They adapt. They endure. That is admirable." David nodded. "Survival is part of our nature, but so is compassion and cooperation. We fight when we must, but we also work to understand each other. That is why I am here." A faint rumble shook the palace, a reminder that the enemy was still active, testing the walls and defenses. Lyria straightened, her demeanor shifting instantly from relaxed to commanding. "It is not over. They will try again, and we must be ready." David agreed, analyzing the rumble with a calm intensity. "I have ideas to reinforce your defenses, create diversions, and even predict where they might strike next. We can prepare before they make their move." For the first time, Lyria felt a sense of hope. Here was someone from another world, willing to help her not out of obligation, but out of understanding and respect. She began to see that humans, underestimated by many, could possess skills and courage beyond what her people imagined. As the hours passed into night, the bond between them grew. It was not friendship in the traditional sense, nor was it romance, though the seed of trust had begun to sprout. It was a connection forged in shared purpose, in the recognition of strength and intelligence across species. By the time the twin moons rose high in the sky, casting a silvery glow through the crystal windows, Lyria found herself speaking freely, sharing thoughts she had never voiced to anyone. David listened patiently, never interrupting, never judging. His presence was grounding, a reminder that even in a world of intrigue and danger, understanding and respect could exist. "You are unusual, David," she said finally, her voice soft but sincere. "You see things differently. Most outsiders would either run or fight without thought. You observe, and you help. That is rare." He smiled, a small but genuine gesture. "Humans are complicated. We can be reckless, yes, but we can also learn, adapt, and protect. You have allowed me to see your world, and I hope I can be of service." Lyria's expression softened further. "I believe you can. I believe you are more than what I expected from someone of your kind." Outside, the palace remained a maze of corridors, energy shields, and silent threats. Inside, the human and the princess prepared for the days ahead, knowing that danger would come again, and that the fate of her kingdom might depend on their cooperation. For the first time in centuries, Lyria felt a flicker of optimism. Perhaps, she thought, the key to survival was not just strength, technology, or tradition, but the courage to trust someone different, someone who saw the world not as it was, but as it could be. And David, standing quietly beside her as she watched the city below, knew that this mission was no longer just about diplomacy. It was about proving that humans, even in alien worlds, could make a difference, inspire hope, and forge alliances that transcended species and expectations. The night stretched on, the palace bathed in the soft glow of twin moons. Two unlikely allies, bound by circumstance and mutual respect, faced the future together. Outside, shadows moved and dangers lurked, but inside, understanding and courage had taken root. As they planned, spoke, and listened. The first seeds of a lasting partnership were sown, a partnership that would shape not only the fate of a kingdom, but also the reputation of humanity among the stars. The night had barely begun when the distant hum of energy shields flared sharply, signaling a new wave of attackers. David and Princess Lyria were in the strategy room, going over patrol schedules and security grids, when the alarms echoed through the palace halls. The sudden sound made the chamber vibrate slightly, a reminder that danger was immediate and unavoidable. Lyria's eyes sharpened instantly, her earlier calm replaced by a warrior's focus. She rose from her seat, her movements precise and commanding. "They are attacking again," she said, her voice low, but steady. "We cannot underestimate them this time." David rose as well, studying the palace layouts in his mind. "We need to anticipate their moves, control the key access points, and protect civilians. If we act carefully, we can minimize chaos." Together, they moved swiftly through the palace corridors. Soldiers scurried past, alert but uncertain, unsure of the human who had accompanied their princess. David noticed their hesitation and quickly assessed the situation. He knew that showing confidence and decisiveness would inspire trust, even among aliens who were wary of humans. The first wave of attackers arrived at the outer courtyard. They were agile and well-equipped, using technology that blended with the shadows, making them difficult to detect. David pointed to blind spots in the defense grid, suggesting barricades and diversions. Lyria listened carefully, nodding at his instructions, then commanded her soldiers to implement the changes immediately. As the attackers advanced, David moved with precision, using both his knowledge of human tactics and improvisation to guide the palace guards. He identified choke points, suggested traps, and advised on formations that allowed the soldiers to cover each other while minimizing exposure. Lyria watched closely, impressed by his quick thinking and ability to adapt under pressure. A sudden explosion rocked one of the outer walls, sending dust and debris into the air. One of the palace guards was thrown off balance, and David leapt forward to pull him to safety. His actions were swift and calculated, showing courage that inspired those around him. Even the most skeptical soldiers began to trust his guidance. Meanwhile, Lyria faced the attackers herself, wielding her energy staff with precision and strength. She was a formidable warrior, moving with grace and deadly accuracy. Yet even she recognized the value of having an ally who could think differently, who could anticipate the enemy's moves in ways her soldiers could not. David and Lyria worked in perfect synergy. While she engaged the enemy head-on, he coordinated defenses, suggested counterattacks, and ensured that the palace inhabitants remained safe. Their communication was seamless, built not on words alone but on understanding each other's intentions and capabilities. At one point, a group of attackers attempted to flank the princess from a hidden corridor. David noticed their approach immediately and signaled the guards to intercept. They moved quickly, cutting off the attackers and forcing them to retreat. Lyria glanced at him, a flash of approval in her eyes. "You see what they do before they even act?" she said, astonished. David shook his head slightly, trying to downplay it. "Observation and reasoning. Anyone can do it with focus. But your soldiers respond, well, they trust your command and follow orders. That is why this works." The battle intensified. Energy beams clashed against shields, sparks flying as metal and energy met. The attackers were skilled, but they had underestimated the unity and ingenuity of the palace defenders. David directed the guards to form defensive lines while creating diversions that forced the enemy into traps. Lyria moved through the battlefield with unmatched agility, her movements both beautiful and lethal. Amid the chaos, David noticed a small group of enemy infiltrators attempting to reach the communication hub. If they succeeded, they could disable the palace's warning systems, leaving the defenders vulnerable. Without hesitation, he sprinted toward them, using his knowledge of engineering and stealth to navigate the corridors undetected. He reached the hub just as the infiltrators were about to breach the entrance. Using quick improvisation, David activated the security locks and trapped the infiltrators inside. They struggled for a moment, then realized escape was impossible. Lyria arrived moments later, dispatching the last few threats with her staff. Together, they had neutralized a critical part of the enemy's plan, saving countless lives. The tide of the battle began to turn. With David's strategic thinking and Lyria's leadership on the front lines, the attackers were pushed back, retreating into the shadows from which they had come. The palace, though damaged in places, remained secure. Guards and inhabitants alike began to breathe easier, realizing that the defense had been stronger than anyone had anticipated. After the battle, Lyria and David walked through the palace corridors, surveying the aftermath. Broken walls and scorched floors were a stark reminder of the night's events. But the lives saved and the enemy repelled were victories worth noting. Lyria's expression softened as she looked at the human who had stood beside her through the chaos. "You were incredible," she said, her voice carrying a mixture of respect and relief. "I did not expect a human to be so capable in battle, to think so clearly under pressure. You have changed my perspective." David shrugged, though a small smile appeared on his face. "I did what I could. Your leadership made it possible. I only guided where I could. You inspired your people to fight, and they followed. That is why we succeeded. Also. Clamming. Also. Lyria nodded thoughtfully. "You are unlike anyone I have ever met. Most outsiders would have panicked, fled, or caused more harm than good. You adapted, and you helped us win." As they continued through the palace, David noticed that the princess's usual guarded demeanor was softening. There was still caution. Of course, she could not let her guard down entirely, but there was also trust, a recognition that humans could be allies in ways she had never imagined. They reached a command chamber where repairs were underway. Engineers worked quickly to restore damaged systems, while medics attended to minor injuries. Lyria observed the activity, her mind already planning for future defenses. She turned to David. "We cannot afford to wait for them to attack again. We must anticipate, plan, and act before they strike." David agreed, studying the maps and schematics displayed on holographic screens. "We can reinforce the outer defenses, add early warning systems, and train your soldiers to respond faster. If we combine alien technology with some human strategies, we can make the palace nearly untouchable." For hours, they worked side by side, refining plans and discussing tactics. The princess asked questions, tested ideas, and sometimes challenged David's suggestions. He welcomed it, knowing that collaboration, not obedience, would make their defense stronger. Their dialogue was a mixture of strategy, insight, and mutual respect, a partnership forged in the crucible of battle. Later, when the immediate threat had passed, they stood together on a balcony overlooking the city. The night was calm now, the lights of the palace reflecting in the pools of water below. Lyria exhaled slowly, allowing herself a rare moment of quiet reflection. "You have shown me something I did not expect," she said softly, "that humans, though physically weaker, can possess strength of mind and courage that rivals the strongest warriors of my world. You have my respect, David." David smiled, feeling the weight of her words. "And you have shown me that leadership, responsibility, and courage are not bound by species. You inspire your people, and you inspire those who fight beside you." The night remained quiet, but both knew that the enemy had not disappeared entirely. Their victory was temporary, a moment to regroup and prepare for the challenges ahead. Yet in that moment, trust had been solidified, and a bond had formed that transcended worlds. Lyria turned her gaze to David, noting the calm determination in his eyes. He was not just a human. He was a symbol of hope, of ingenuity, and of courage that could change the course of history. And for the first time, she realized that perhaps humans could be more than allies. They could be catalysts for a better future. As the twin moons cast their silvery glow across the palace, the princess and the human stood together, silent but united. Outside, shadows still lurked, and danger would return. But inside, a plan had been made. Trust had been earned, and a partnership had been forged. For Lyria, the night had been a revelation. For David, it had been a proving ground. Together, they had faced the chaos of battle, navigated fear and uncertainty, and emerged stronger for it. And though the war was far from over, the promise of alliance, strategy, and mutual respect had never been clearer. The first light of the twin suns broke across the horizon, painting the palace in soft shades of gold and violet. The calm of dawn was deceptive, for the enemy had not been idle. Intelligence gathered during the previous night indicated a full-scale attack was imminent. David and Princess Lyria stood together in the command chamber, reviewing every detail and preparing for the challenge that would decide the fate of the kingdom. "This will not be easy," Lyria said, her voice steady but edged with concern. "They have learned from their past failures. They will strike with everything they have." "Smarance," David nodded, his mind already running through strategies. "Then we will be ready. We combine your forces with the strategies we devised. I trust your soldiers, and I trust your instincts. Together, we can repel them completely." Lyria gave a faint nod of approval, then began issuing orders. The palace guards moved efficiently under her command, setting up barriers, reinforcing energy shields, and positioning troops at key choke points. David worked alongside them, guiding deployment and predicting enemy movements based on patterns he had observed the night before. Their coordination was seamless, each complementing the other's strengths. As the enemy fleet appeared on the horizon, shimmering like dark waves against the sky, tension gripped the palace. Ships moved swiftly, cloaking technology, making some nearly invisible. Ground forces began advancing through the palace gates, ready to breach the walls. David and Lyria stood together on the balcony, overseeing the battlefield, both calm and alert. "They think they can overwhelm us with numbers," David said quietly. "But they underestimate strategy, intelligence, and the resolve of those who defend their home." Lyria's eyes narrowed. "Then we will show them that strength is not only in numbers, but in unity, courage, and cleverness." The first wave of attackers reached the outer defenses. Energy shields flared as beams collided, and David immediately identified weak points, signaling reinforcements to support faltering positions. Lyria moved among her soldiers, boosting morale and leading precise strikes. She was a figure of grace and authority, commanding respect without fear, and her people responded with unwavering loyalty. David coordinated with the palace engineers to deploy temporary barriers and diversions, creating bottlenecks that forced the enemy into predictable patterns. They were clever, but they were also predictable when guided by strategy. David's human perspective, combined with Lyria's intimate knowledge of her kingdom, created a defense that was both innovative and effective. Amid the chaos, a group of heavily armed enemy soldiers attempted to breach the inner sanctum, aiming to capture Lyria and disrupt command. David noticed them almost instantly. Without hesitation, he grabbed a nearby energy conduit and created a temporary blockade, forcing the attackers into a narrow corridor where the palace guards could handle them efficiently. Lyria arrived moments later, her staff glowing as she dispatched the remaining intruders with precise strikes. She glanced at David, a mixture of gratitude and admiration in her eyes. "You always see what others cannot," she said quietly, acknowledging his sharp mind. The battle continued for hours. The enemy deployed advanced technology, but David's strategies and Lyria's leadership turned every attack into a trap. Alien soldiers fell into controlled zones where reinforcements waited, while energy fields and barriers delayed their movements. Civilians and non-combatants were evacuated safely, thanks to David's prior planning. At one critical moment, the enemy attempted to hack the palace's communication network, hoping to sow confusion. David moved swiftly, using both his human ingenuity and the palace's advanced systems to counteract the hack. He isolated the threat, rerouted communications, and ensured that all units remained connected and coordinated. The attackers, frustrated and unprepared for such resilience, began to falter. Lyria pressed the advantage, leading her elite guards in a decisive counterattack. With David guiding troop movements and pointing out vulnerabilities, they struck with precision. Enemy formations broke, retreating under the relentless pressure of a defense that was both strategic and fearless. As the sun rose fully over the horizon, the last of the enemy forces fled the palace grounds. The battlefield grew quiet, save for the soft hum of energy shields and the exhausted but triumphant breaths of the defenders. The palace, though battered, had held, and the kingdom was safe for now. Lyria turned to David, her expression softening as relief and respect shone through. "You were incredible," she said, her voice carrying both warmth and awe. "I did not expect a human to be so brave, so intelligent in battle." "You have earned the respect of my people and mine." David shook his head modestly, though a faint smile appeared on his lips. "I only did what I could. Your leadership inspired your people, and they followed you willingly. Without your guidance, none of this would have been possible." Lyria's eyes studied him carefully. "Humans are stronger than I imagined," she admitted. "Not in the way of brute force, but in courage, creativity, and determination. You have proven that humans are capable of extraordinary things, even in worlds far from their own." David looked at her, feeling a quiet pride. "And you have shown me that leadership is more than command. It is about understanding, inspiring, and protecting those who rely on you. Together, we make a strong team." The palace inhabitants began to emerge from their shelters, many of them showing gratitude and admiration for both Lyria and David. Soldiers who had once been skeptical of the human's presence now looked to him with trust and respect. His actions had not only saved lives, but had also changed perceptions about humans among an alien race that had long doubted them. Lyria moved through the crowd, acknowledging the efforts of her people and David alike. Her voice carried across the courtyard. "Today, we have not only defended our kingdom, but demonstrated that courage and intelligence matter more than fear or prejudice. We are united, and we are strong." David watched as the people rallied around their princess, feeling a sense of fulfillment. This mission had begun as a diplomatic effort, but it had become much more. He had proven that humanity's strength was not in size or power alone, but in resilience, ingenuity, and the willingness to act with honor and courage. As the sun climbed higher, casting warm light across the palace grounds, Lyria approached David once more. "The battle is over, but our work is not finished," she said. "We must rebuild, strengthen, and prepare for the future. But I am grateful for your presence, your guidance, and your courage. You have earned a place here, among my people, and in my trust." David nodded, humbled by her words. "I am honored. My people may be far from here, but I have learned that courage, loyalty, and understanding are universal. We are not so different, despite the distance between our worlds." Lyria's gaze softened. "Perhaps not, and perhaps together, we can create a future where humans and aliens can coexist, where alliances are stronger than conflicts, and where trust replaces fear." For the first time in her life, Lyria felt a sense of hope that was not tied to strategy or war. It was a hope born of understanding and respect, a recognition that courage and intelligence could bridge worlds. And for David, it was a confirmation that humanity's potential was limitless, even in places far beyond Earth. The palace slowly returned to normal, with repairs beginning and soldiers resuming patrols. The city below, once threatened by chaos, was safe, and the people celebrated quietly, aware of the cost of vigilance, but inspired by the victory. As the day progressed, David and Lyria walked together through the palace gardens, the soft light illuminating the alien flora. They spoke quietly, discussing plans for rebuilding, strengthening alliances, and preparing for any future threats. The bond between them had grown beyond mere respect. It was now a partnership forged in trust, courage, and shared experience. "You have changed the way I see humans," Lyria said softly. "I will not underestimate your kind again. You have shown that even the smallest presence can make the greatest difference." David smiled. "And you have shown that even the strongest leader can benefit from an unexpected ally. Together, We have proven that courage and intelligence matter most. As they stood together, overlooking the palace and the city beyond, the twin suns bathed them in light, signaling a new beginning. The battle had been won, trust had been earned, and a partnership that transcended worlds had been forged. In the coming days, the kingdom would rebuild, alliances would be strengthened, and the memory of this night would serve as a testament to the power of courage, ingenuity, and cooperation. For Lyria, it was a lesson in hope and trust. For David, it was a moment of proof humanity's place in the galaxy was not defined by fear or weakness, but by the strength to act wisely and bravely when it mattered most. And as the twin suns rose higher, illuminating the palace in radiant light, both human and alien knew that their worlds, though different, could achieve greatness together. The kingdom was safe, the enemy defeated, and the story of courage and respect would echo among the stars for generations to come.